Well, it's great to be here. I was a little bit surprised when Governor Perry's office called several years ago and said, we want you to serve on this commission. And I said, well, how much money does it pay? And they said, nothing. And I said, I think I'll pass. And so they called me back about 2 weeks later, and they said, we want you to serve on this commission. Now, when the governor's office calls you twice, it's pretty obvious that they want you to do this. So I said, okay, where does it meet? So that's how I got involved in the Claim Minerals Proceeds Commission. I would like to say that I was a volunteer at first, but I was not. But I learned a lot. And I guess that's why I'm here, because I learned a lot. And I think that we really today are witnessing the birth of a new era. I think that new era, in recognition of the proper history that Texas should portray, may take 5 years. It may take longer than that. But there is a power here that's growing. And I think if we are very careful in what we do, we can probably grow this exponentially, and it may grow into other states as well. That's not the goal, of course, but I'm just saying I think it's that powerful, or pretends to be that powerful. I guess what I'm trying to do today is to tell you a little bit about how I feel with my 10 years service in the legislature. I was the chairman of the Liquor Regulation Committee. I was the chairman and creator of the Sunset Commission, along with a couple other people. And I was the chairman of Environmental Affairs. I'm the only person in the last 75 years to override a governor's veto. I came within 3 votes of eliminating the state property tax. In all those things, defeat is a learner as well. So let me just say to you that I understand the frustrations that you have. I understand the anger that you have. I've heard it for several years. And I've heard it from some of you who sit here. And I understand that it's not solved yet. And I think that you have reason to be angry. I think you have reason to be in despair. And I think you have reason for a sense of justice. And with all of those things justified, the only thing I have to tell you is that emotions will not pass a bill in the legislature today. Emotions are not going to get the problems that you seek to be resolved passed by themselves. They will help, but they will not solve the problems that you are trying to solve. But so the question that I think you need to ask yourself is, if in looking at what we have facing us, what does pass a bill of this magnitude? Because this is not a bill, the kind of system that I recommended. It's not a bill that's a normal bill for the legislature. First of all, they just will be starting to hear the true history of things with the display at the Bullock. I think that is really one of your best assets that you can use today, and hopefully maybe when you take that display and exhibit around the state, maybe you'll end up back at the Bullock right before the legislature meets, and we might have some people who've not seen that, who have power in the Texas legislature, see it before the session starts. So first of all, it takes organization. I would like to do this. If you will please indulge me. We've been sitting here a while. I'd like for everybody to get up. Stand up, please. Stand up. I'd like for you to turn around, and I'd like for you to introduce yourself to somebody that you do not know that's here, and tell them your name and tell them where you're from.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, you can, resume your seat. You can resume your seat now. You have just illustrated for me what needs to be done all across Texas, because most of you didn't know the people around you, right? So what we're trying to do is to have an organization that has feelings and understanding for what it takes to be successful. To do that, you have to know the people who are with you. And you have just made the first step to do that. So the second thing it takes is hard work. You have to understand that it's not going to be overnight. And in many instances, you are frustrated because it's taken so long to get to this point even. The reason it's taken this long is that you're not organized in the first place. If you had had an alliance, an association, or whatever you want to call it in the first place, you probably would be a little further. What is a little further? Well, the hard work I'm talking about is you have to get together and you have to understand and agree on the goals that you're going to seek. Not just the goal of getting legislation passed that's favorable, but how are you going to do that? What is the administration of that? How do you organize and have people making influence in their own areas? And that takes a little bit of work in terms of an organization that has a little bit of a hierarchy, how people report back to a central place and how they view the issues that you're talking about. How do you educate people who don't know anything about this history that you know about? It takes some time. So then the goals relate to what do you want? What can you reasonably expect to get? And I do not diminish that statement whatsoever. What can you reasonably expect to get means how have you been able to tell your story to the people who count. That is, the people who vote in the legislature. You may not like this, but they will seek more of the facts than all of the emotional things that you have to tell them over the last 100 years. I'm sorry, but people in the legislature, I was there 10 years, I know what I'm talking about, they don't have the time to listen to 2 or 3 hours worth of talk. And that will multiply by the number of people who come to see them with the same kind of issue. So I'm just saying to you, you need to have an organization that understands that and that will, you don't like this word, I'm sure, will lobby for you. But when the word is yours and the efforts are yours, maybe you like it a little bit more, okay? So the question then is next, what is the future of the goals of this group? I think the future is that you have to have the votes, the power, and the motions to propel the cause, but you are changing history, okay? Today, you're changing history little by little. I think the doctor would agree with me. And I think he would also probably agree with me that that's really hard, because you write a textbook, and it's not like the textbook that was the last textbook. And there's some, maybe even a couple of sentences that are absolutely opposite of what the prior textbook was. It makes it really difficult for people to own up to the fact that they might have been wrong. And telling somebody that they're wrong and they have been wrong is not a comfortable position to be in. I think you recognize that. So the thing that the demographics of Texas shows is that the Hispanic population is growing exponentially, and that more than likely your influence as a population and your influence in the legislature especially will grow as well. And the question then becomes this. You want to explain to your legislator that this is an easy process for him right now. He can make this transition simple with installing a system to determine land grants and so on that we have proposed, or that I proposed. It failed because it failed by a vote of 4-4. So when you don't have the extra vote, well, you don't make it. Would he rather have that system in place, or would he rather have a more aggressive system in place 15 years from now? It's an option. They won't want to hear that option, but it's a true option as far as I'm concerned. I think the next thing that you have to have is a timely public relations program that's not only short-term, it answers questions over a legislative period, which is 140 days, starts next January, and a long-term program, so that your information is not only carried by somebody who is on site most every day during the session, knows what's happening, and you have a public relations program that might fit in with some of the things that the doctor has been talking about. It's something that, unfortunately, those things cost money. You just can't get around some of the things that you have to do that cost money. And I think maybe in this crowd, you might have spent a little money with some other people and not been very successful. I saw that while I was a member of the commission. It really hurt me in many respects to see people there as witnesses and as observers who had paid individuals, lawyers and genealogists and so on, fees that never got them anywhere. And I think that's got to change. And I think with an organization like this, that's just for me, you might have a little better chance because your membership fees go into a definite kind of a system that usually works. And in contrast, I will tell you that there are several lobby groups in Texas. One is the Texas Highway Contractors. Maybe some of you work for a highway contractor. Maybe some of you work for a supplier of a highway contractor. Those people who have been in business a long time and their organization has been there a long time, depend on the state to grant them contracts for highway construction. So they're very careful about who they get in the Texas House and Senate and on the Texas Highway Commission. I think you need to know that for them, for example, close to $1 million a year raised is not unusual. I wouldn't expect that you would need to do that, but I would expect that over the years, your political action fund ought to be raising money. It's not to buy votes. It's to keep the people that you have helping you know the legislators and them to know you. There's a misconception about how that money is spent. I think in some respects, yes, it is spent for for elections, just like we had the primary election. But in the long run, you have to know people, and they have to know you before they'll trust you. I think you'd agree with me about that. So in the long run, here's where you are today. You have no political action committee. You have a fledgling organization, but you do have people who know other people that are in politics and in elected office. And that's a great start. And that goes all over the state of Texas. I do not expect that this organization is just a South Texas group. I think you'll have some influence in other areas of the state where there are people who have been elected for a number of years, which seniority always brings power. I can't help it, you can't help it, and you can fight all of that you want. It never succeeds. What succeeds is you knocking on somebody's door that you may or may not know and saying, "Hi, I'd like to talk to you about this particular issue." And they will take notice, and their staff will take notice. Knowing the staff of elected officials is really critical. If you know somebody that works for a state senator or a state representative, or you know somebody that'd like to work for one, that's great, you know, because you have an inroad there. We are basically changing history, and you are part of it. And the question is, how much do you personally want to invest in the future? Thank you.